The Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Preface. This volume is the second of a series, the first of which is The Science of Getting Rich. As that book is intended solely for those who want money, so this is for those who want health, and who want a practical guide and handbook, not a philosophical treatise. It is an instructor in the use of the universal principle of life, and my effort has been to explain the way in so plain and simple a fashion that the reader, though he may have given no previous study to New Thought or metaphysics, may readily follow it to perfect health. While retaining all essentials, I have carefully eliminated all non-essentials. I have used no technical, abstruse, or difficult language, and have kept the one point in view at all times. As its title asserts, this book deals with science, not speculation. The monistic theory of the universe, the theory that matter, mind, consciousness, and life are all manifestations of one substance, is now accepted by most thinkers. And if you accept this theory, you cannot deny the logical conclusions you will find herein. Best of all, the methods of thought and action prescribed have been tested by the author in his own case, and in the case of hundreds of others during 12 years of practice, and with continuous and unfailing success. I can say of the science of being well that it works, and that wherever its laws are complied with, it can no more fail to work than the science of geometry can fail to work. If the tissues of your body have not been so destroyed that continued life is impossible, you can get well. And if you will think and act in a certain way, you will get well. If the reader wishes to fully understand the monistic theory of the cosmos, he is recommended to read Hegel and Emerson, to read also The Eternal News, a pamphlet by J. Brown, 300 Cathcart Road, Govenhill, Glasgow, Scotland. Some enlightenment may also be found in a series of articles by the author, which were published in The Nautilus, Holyoke, Massachusetts, during the year 1909, under the title, What is Truth? Those who wish more detailed information as to the performance of the voluntary functions, eating, drinking, breathing, and sleeping, may read New Science of Living and Healing, Letters to a Woman's Husband, and The Constructive Use of Foods booklets by W.D. Wattles, which may be obtained from the publishers of this book. I would also recommend the writings of Horace Fletcher and of Edward Hooker Dewey. Read all these, if you like, as a sort of buttress to your faith, but let me warn you against making a mistake of studying many conflicting theories and practicing at the same time parts of several different systems. For if you get well, it must be by giving your whole mind to the right way of thinking and living. Remember that the science of being well claims to be a complete and sufficient guide in every particular. Concentrate upon the way of thinking and acting it prescribes, and follow it in every detail, and you will get well. Or, if you are already well, you will remain so, trusting that you will go on until the priceless blessing of perfect health is yours. Chapter 1. The Principle of Health. In the personal application of the science of being well, as in that of the science of getting rich, certain fundamental truths must be known in the beginning and accepted without question. Some of these truths we state here. The perfectly natural performance of function constitutes health, and the perfectly natural performance of function results from the natural action of the principle of life. There is a principle of life in the universe. It is the one living substance from which all things are made. This living substance permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. It is in and through all things, like a very refined and diffusible ether. All life comes from it. Its life is all the life there is. Man is a form of this living substance, and it has within him a principle of health. The word principle is used as meaning source. The principle of health in man, when in full constructive activity, causes all the voluntary functions of his life to be perfectly performed. It is the principle of health in man which really works all healing, no matter what quote system or quote remedy is employed. And this principle of health is brought into constructive activity by thinking in a certain way. I proceed now to prove this last statement. We all know that cures are wrought by all the different and often opposite methods employed in the various branches of the healing art. The allopath, who gives a strong dose of a counterpoison, cures his patient, and the homeopath, who gives a diminutive dose of the poison most similar to that of the disease, also cures it. If allopathy ever cured any given disease, it it is certain that homeopathy never cured that disease. And if homeopathy ever cured an ailment, allopathy could not possibly cure that ailment. The two systems are radically opposite in theory and practice. Yet both, quote, cure most diseases. And even the remedies used by physicians in any one school are not the same. Go with a case of indigestion to half a dozen doctors and compare their prescriptions. It is more than likely that none of the ingredients of any one of them will be in the others. Must we not conclude that their patients are healed by a principle of health within themselves, and not by something in these varied remedies? Not only this, but we find the same ailments cured by the osteopath with manipulations of the spine, by the faith healer with prayer, by the food scientist with bills of fare, by the Christian scientist with a formulated creed statement, by the mental scientist with affirmation, and by the hygienists with differing plans of living. What conclusion can we come to in the face of all these facts but that there is a principle of health which is the same in all people and which really accomplishes all the cures, and that there is something in all the systems which, under favorable conditions, arouses the principle of health to action, that is, medicines, manipulations, prayers, bills of fare, affirmations, and hygienic practices cure whenever they cause the principle of health to become active, and fail whenever they do not cause it to become active. Does not all this indicate that the results depend upon the way the patient thinks about the remedy, rather than upon the ingredients in the prescription? There is an old story which furnishes so good an illustration on this point that I will give it here. It is said that in the Middle Ages, the bones of a saint, kept in one of the monasteries, were working miracles of healing. On certain days, a great crowd of the afflicted gathered to touch the relics, and all who did so were healed. On the eve of one of these occasions, some sacrilegious rascal gained access to the case in which the wonder-working relics were kept, and stole the bones. And in the morning, with the usual crowd of sufferers waiting in the gates, the fathers found themselves shorn of the sources of the miraculous working power. They resolved to keep the matter quiet, hoping that by doing so they might find the thief and recover their treasures. And hastening to the cellar of the convent, they dug up the bones of a murderer who had been buried there many years before. These they placed in the case, intending to make some plausible excuse for the failure of the saint to perform his usual miracles on that day. And then they let in the waiting assemblage of the sick and infirm. To the intense astonishment of those in the secret, the bones of the malefactor proved as efficacious as those of the saint, and the healing went on as before. One of the fathers is said to have left a history of the occurrence, in which he confessed that, in his judgment, the healing power had been in the people themselves all the time, and never in the bones at all. Whether the story is true or not, the conclusion applies to all the cures wrought by all the systems. The power that heals is in the patient himself. The power that heals is in the patient himself, and whether it shall become active or not does not depend upon the physical or mental means used, but upon the way the patient thinks about these means. There is a universal principle of life, as Jesus taught, a great spiritual healing power, and there is a principle of health in man which is related to this healing power. This is dormant or active, according to the way a man thinks. He can always quicken it into activity by thinking in a certain way. Your getting well does not depend upon the adoption of some system, or the finding of some remedy. People with your identical ailments have been healed by all systems and all remedies. It does not depend upon climate. Some people are well and others are sick in all climates. It does not depend upon avocation, unless in case of those who work under poisonous conditions. People are well in all trades and professions. Your getting well depends upon your beginning to think and act in a certain way. The way a man thinks about things is determined by what he believes about them. His thoughts are determined by his faith, and the results depend upon his making a personal application of his faith. If a man has faith in the efficacy of a medicine and is able to apply that faith to himself, that medicine will certainly cause him to be cured. But though his faith be great, he will not be cured unless he applies it to himself. Many sick people have faith for others, but not for themselves. So if he has faith in a system of diet and can personally apply that faith, it will cure him. And if he has faith in prayers and affirmations and personally applies his faith, prayers and affirmations will cure him. Faith, personally applied, cures. And no matter how great the faith or how persistent the thought, it will not cure without. Chapter 2. The Foundations of Faith. Before man can think in a certain way, which will cause his diseases to be healed, he must believe in certain truths which are here stated. All things are made from one living substance, which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. While all visible things are made from it, yet this substance, in its first formless condition, is in and through all the visible forms that it has made. Its life is in all, and its intelligence is in all. This substance creates by thought, and its method is by taking the form of that which it thinks about. The thought of a form held by this substance causes it to assume that form. The thought of a motion causes it to institute that motion. Forms are created by the substance in moving itself into certain attitudes or positions. When original substance wishes to create a given form, it thinks of the motions which will produce that form. When it wishes to create a world, it thinks of the motions, perhaps extending through ages, which will result in its coming into the attitude and form of the world. And these motions are made. When it wishes to create an oak tree, it thinks of the sequences of movement, perhaps extending through ages, which will result in the form of an oak tree, and these motions are made. The particular sequences of motions by which differing forms should be produced were established in the beginning. They are changeless. Certain motions instituted in the formless substance will forever produce certain forms. Man's body is formed from the original substance, and it is a result of certain motions which first existed as thoughts of original substance. The motions which produce, renew, and repair the body of man are called functions, and these functions are of two classes, voluntary and involuntary. The involuntary functions are under the control of the principle of health in man, and are performed in a perfectly healthy manner so long as man thinks in a certain way. The voluntary functions of life are eating, drinking, breathing, and sleeping. These, entirely or in part, are under the direction of man's conscious mind, and he can perform them in a perfectly healthy way if he will. If he does not perform them in a healthy way, he cannot long be well. So we see that if man thinks in a certain way and eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps in a corresponding way, he will be well. The involuntary functions of a man's life are under the direct control of the principle of health, and so long as man thinks in a perfectly healthy way, these functions are perfectly performed, for the action of the principle of health is largely directed by man's conscious thought, affecting his subconscious mind. Man is a thinking center, capable of originating thought, and as he does not know everything, he makes mistakes and thinks errors. Not knowing everything, he believes things to be true which are not true. Man holds in his thought the idea of diseased and abnormal functioning and conditions, and so perverts the action of the principle of health, causing diseased and abnormal functioning and conditions within his own body. In the original substance there are held only the thoughts of perfect motion, perfect and healthy function, complete life. God never thinks disease or imperfection, but for countless ages men have held thoughts of disease, abnormality, old age, and death, and the perverted functioning resulting from these thoughts has become a part of inheritance of the race. Our ancestors have, for many generations, held imperfect ideas concerning human form and functioning, and we begin life with racial subconscious impressions of imperfection and disease. This is not natural or a part of the plan of nature. The purpose of nature can be nothing else than the perfection of life. This we see from the very nature of life itself. It is the nature of life to continually advance toward more perfect living. Advancement is the inevitable result of the very act of living. Increase is always the result of active living. Whatever lives must live more and more. The seed lying in the granary has life, but it is not living. Put it into the soil, and it becomes active, and at once begins to gather to itself from the surrounding substance, and to build a plant form. It will so cause increase that a seed head will be produced containing 30, 60, or 100 seeds, each having as much life as the first. Life, by living, increases. Life cannot live without increasing, and the fundamental impulse of life is to live. It is in response to this fundamental impulse that original substance works and creates. God must live, and he cannot live except as he creates and increases. In multiplying forms, he is moving on to live more. The universe is a great advancing life, and the purpose of nature is the advancement of life toward perfection, toward perfect functioning. The purpose of nature is perfect health. The purpose of nature, so far as man is concerned, is that he should be continuously advancing into more life and progressing toward perfect life, and that he should live the most complete life possible in his present sphere of action. This must be so, because that which lives in man is seeking more life. Give a little child a pencil and paper, and he begins to draw crude figures. That which lives in him is trying to express itself in art. Give him a set of blocks, and he will try to build something. That which lives in him is seeking expression in architecture. Seat him at a piano, and he will try to draw harmony from the keys. That which lives in him is trying to express itself in music. That which lives in man is always seeking to live more, and since man lives most when he is well, the principle of nature in him can seek only health. The natural state of man is a state of perfect health, and everything in him and in nature tends toward health. Sickness can have no place in the thoughts of original substance, for it is by its own nature continually impelled toward the fullest and most perfect life, therefore toward health. Man, as he exists in the thought of the formless substance, has perfect health. Disease, which is abnormal or perverted functioning, motion perfectly made, or made in the direction of imperfect life, has no place in the thought of fettered stuff. The supreme mind never thinks of disease. Disease was not created or ordained by God, or sent forth from him. It is wholly a product of separate consciousness, of the individual thought of man. God, the formless substance, does not see disease, think disease, know disease, or recognize disease. Disease is recognized only by the thought of man. God thinks nothing but health. From all the foregoing, we see that health is a fact or truth in the original substance from which we are all formed, and that disease is imperfect functioning, resulting from the imperfect thoughts of men, past and present. If man's thoughts of himself had always been those of perfect health, man could not possibly now be otherwise than perfectly healthy. Man in perfect health is the thought of original substance, and man in imperfect health is the result of his own failure to think perfect health and to perform the voluntary functions of life in a healthy way. We will here arrange in a syllabus the basic truths of the science of being well. There is a thinking substance from which all things are made, in which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. It is the life of all. The thought of a form in this substance causes the form. The thought of a motion produces the motion. In relation to man, the thoughts of this substance are always in perfect functioning and perfect health. Man is a thinking center, capable of original thought, and his thought has power over his own functioning. By thinking imperfect thoughts, he has caused imperfect and perverted functioning, and by performing the voluntary functions of life in a perverted manner, he assisted in causing disease. If man will think only thoughts of perfect health, he can cause with himself the functioning of perfect health. All the power of life will be exerted to assist him, but this healthy functioning will not continue unless man performs the external or voluntary functions of living in a healthy manner. Man's first step must be to learn how to think perfect health, and his second step to learn how to eat, drink, breathe, and sleep in a perfectly healthy way. Chapter 3. Life and its organisms. The human body is the abiding place of the energy which renews it when warm, which eliminates waste or poisonous matter, which repairs the body when broken or injured. This energy we call life. Life is not generated or produced within the body. It produces the body. The seed which has been kept in the storehouse for years will grow when planted in the soil and produce a plant. But the life in the plant is not generated by its growing. It is the life which makes the plant grow. The performance of function does not cause life. It is life which causes function to be performed. Life is first, function afterward. It is life which distinguishes organic from inorganic matter, but it is not produced after the organization of matter. Life is the principle or force which causes organization. It builds organisms. It is a principle or force inherent in original substance. All life is one. This life principle of all is the principle of health in man, and becomes constructively active whenever man thinks in a certain way. Whoever, therefore, thinks in a certain way will surely have perfect health if his external functioning is in conformity with his thought. The external functioning must conform to the thought. Man cannot hope to be well by thinking health if he eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps like a sick man. The universal life principle, then, is the principle of health in man. It is one with original substance. There is one original substance from which all things are made, and this substance is alive, and its life is the principle of life of the universe. This substance has created from itself all the forms of organic life by thinking them, or by faith, they claimed that they were healed or appropriated health for themselves, and in full faith they ceased to think of themselves in connection with disease and thought of themselves only in connection with health. These are the two essentials to thinking in a certain way, which will make you well. First, claim or appropriate health by faith, and second, sever all mental relations with disease and enter into mental relations with health. That which we make ourselves mentally, we become physically, and that with which we unite ourselves mentally, we become unified with physically. If your thought always relates you to disease, then your thought becomes a fixed power to cause disease within you. If your thought always relates you to health, then your thoughts become a fixed power exerted to keep you well. In the case of the people who are healed by medicines, the result is obtained in the same way. They have, consciously or unconsciously, sufficient faith in the means used to cause them to sever mental relations with disease and enter into mental relations with health. Faith may be unconscious. It is possible for us to have subconscious or inbred faith in things like medicine, in which we do not believe to any extent objectively. And this subconscious faith may be quite sufficient to quicken the principle of health into constructive activity. Many who have little conscious faith are healed in this way, while many others who have great faith in the means are not healed because they do not make the personal application to themselves. Chapter 4. What to think. In order to sever all mental relations with disease, you must enter into mental relations with health, making the process positive and negative, with something rejection. In order to receive appropriate health, then you reject and deny disease. Denying disease accomplishes next to nothing. It does little good to cast out the devil and leave the house vacant, for he will presently return with others worse than himself. When you enter into full and constant mental relations with health, you must, of necessity, cease all relationship with disease. The first step in the science of being well is, then, to enter into complete thought connection with health. The best way to do this is to form a mental image or picture of yourself as being well, imagining a perfectly strong and healthy body, and to spend sufficient time in contemplating this image to make it your habitual thought of yourself. This is not so easy as it sounds. It necessitates the taking of considerable time for meditation, and not all persons have the imaging faculty well enough developed to form a distinct mental picture of themselves in a perfect or idealized body. It is much easier, as in the science of getting rich, to form a mental image of things one wants to have, for we have seen these things, or their counterparts, and know how they look. We can picture them very easily from memory. We have never seen ourselves in a perfect body, and a clear mental image is hard to form. It is not necessary or essential, however, to have a clear mental image of yourself as you wish to be. It is only essential to form a conception of perfect health and to relate yourself to it. This conception of health is not a mental picture of a particular thing. It is an understanding of health and carries with it the idea of perfect functioning of every part and organ. You may try to picture yourself as perfect in physique. That helps. And you must think of yourself as doing everything in the manner of a perfectly strong and healthy person. You can picture yourself as walking down the street with an erect body and a vigorous stride. You can picture yourself as doing your day's work easily and with surplus vigor, never tired or weak. You can picture in your mind how all things would be done by a person full of health and power. And you can make yourself the central figure in the picture, doing things in just that way. Never think of the way in which weak or sickly people do things. Always think of the way strong people do things. Spend your leisure time in thinking about the strong way until you have a good conception of it, and always think of yourself in connection with the strong way of doing things. That is what I mean by having a conception is the extreme limit of man's endurance without food. It was considered that only in exceptional cases could he survive a longer fast. So the impression became universally disseminated that one who was deprived of food must die in from 5 to 10 days, and numbers of people, when cut off from food by shipwreck, accident, or famine, did die within this period. But the performances of Dr. Tanner, the 40-day faster, and the writings of Dr. Dewey and others on the fasting cure, together with the experiments of numberless people who have fasted from 40 to 60 days, have shown that man's ability to live without food is vastly greater than had been supposed. Any person, properly educated, can fast from 20 to 40 days with little loss in weight and often with no apparent loss of strength at all. The people who starved to death in 10 days or less did so because they believed that death was inevitable. An erroneous physiology had given them a wrong thought about themselves. When a man is deprived of food, he will die in from 10 to 50 days, according to the way he has been taught, or, in other words, according to the way he thinks about it. So you see that an erroneous physiology can work various mischievous results. No science of being well can be founded on current physiology. It is not sufficiently exact in its knowledge. With all its pretensions, comparatively little is really known as to the interior workings and processes of the body. It is not known just how food is digested. It is not known just what part food plays, if any, in the generation of force. It is not known exactly what the liver, spleen, and pancreas are for, or what part their secretions play in the chemistry of assimilation. On all these and most other points we theorize, but we do not really know. When man begins to study physiology, he enters the domain of theory and disputation. He comes among conflicting opinions, and he is bound to form mistaken ideas concerning himself. These mistaken ideas lead to thinking of wrong thoughts, and this leads to perverted functioning and disease. All that the most perfect knowledge of physiology could do for man would be to enable him to think only thoughts of perfect health, and to eat, drink, breathe, and sleep in a perfectly healthy way. And this, as we shall show, he can do without studying physiology at all. This, for the most part, is true of all hygiene. There are certain fundamental propositions which we should know, and these will be explained in later chapters. But aside from these propositions, ignore physiology and hygiene. They tend to fill your mind and with thoughts of imperfect conditions, and these thoughts will create the imperfect conditions in your own body. You cannot study any science which recognizes disease if you are to think nothing but health. Drop all investigations as to your present condition, its causes or possible results, and set yourself to the work of forming a conception of health. Think about health and the possibilities of health, of the work that may be done and the pleasures that may be enjoyed in a condition of perfect health. Then make this conception your guide in thinking of yourself. Refuse to entertain for an instant any thought of yourself which is not in harmony with it. When any idea of disease or imperfect functioning enters your mind, cast it out instantly by calling up a thought which is in harmony with the conception of health. Think of yourself at all times as realizing conception, as being a strong and perfectly healthy personage, and do not harbor a contrary thought. Know that as you think of yourself in unity with this conception, the original substance which permeates and fills the tissues of your body is taking form according to the thought, and know that this intelligent substance or mind stuff will cause function to be performed in such a way that your body will be rebuilt with perfectly healthy cells. The intelligent substance from which all things are made permeates and penetrates all things, and so it is and through your body. It moves according to its thoughts, and so if you hold only the thoughts of perfectly healthy function, it will cause the movements of perfectly healthy function within you. Hold with persistence to the thought of perfect health in relation to yourself. Do not permit yourself to think in any other way. Hold this thought with perfect faith that it is the fact, the truth. It is the truth so far as your mental body is concerned. You have a mind body and a physical body. The mind body takes form just as you think of yourself, and any thought which you hold continuously is made visible by the transformation of the physical body into its image. Implanting the thought of perfect functioning in the mind body will, in due time, cause perfect functioning in the physical body. The transformation of the physical body into the image of the ideal held by the mind body is not accomplished instantaneously. We cannot transfigure our physical bodies at will as Jesus did. In the creation and recreation of forms, substance moves along the fixed lines of growth it has established. and the impression upon it of the health thought causes the healthy body to be built cell by cell. While the only thoughts of perfect health will ultimately cause perfect functioning, and perfect functioning will in due time produce a perfectly healthy body. It may be as well to condense this chapter into a syllabus. Your physical body is permeated and filled with an intelligent substance, which forms a body of mind stuff. This mind stuff controls the functioning of your physical body. A thought of disease or of imperfect function impressed upon the mind stuff causes disease or imperfect functioning in the physical body. If you are diseased, it is because wrong thoughts have made impressions on this mind stuff. These may have been either your own thoughts or those of your parents. We begin life with many subconscious impressions, both right and wrong. But the natural tendency of all mind is toward health. And if no thoughts are held in the conscious mind save those of health, all internal functioning will come to be performed in a perfectly healthy manner. Chapter 6. Use of the Will. In the practice of the science of being well, the will is not used to compel yourself to go when you are not really able to go, or to do things when you are not physically strong enough to do them. You do not direct your will upon your physical body, or try to compel the proper performance of internal functions by willpower. You direct the will upon the mind, and use it in determining what you shall believe, what you shall think, and to what you shall give your attention. The will should never be used upon any person or thing external to you, and it should never be used upon your own body. The sole legitimate use of the will is in determining to what you shall give your attention, and what you shall think about the things to which your attention is given. All belief begins in the will to believe. You cannot always and instantly believe what you will to believe, but you can always will to believe what you want to believe. You want to believe truth about health, and you can will to do so. The statements that you have been reading in this book are the truth about health, and you can will to believe them. This must be your first step toward getting well. These are the statements you must will to believe: that there is a thinking substance from which all things are made, and that man receives the principle of health, which is his life, from this substance. That man himself is thinking substance, a mind body, permeating a physical body, and that as man's thoughts are, so will the functioning of his physical body be. That if man will think only thoughts of perfect health, he must and will cause the internal and involuntary functioning of his body to be the functioning of health, provided that his external and voluntary functioning and attitude are in accordance with his thoughts. When you will to believe these statements, you must also begin to act upon them. You cannot long retain a belief unless you act upon it. You cannot increase a belief until it becomes faith, unless you act upon it, and you certainly cannot expect to reap benefits in any way from a belief so long as you act as if the opposite were true. You cannot long have faith in health if you continue to act like a sick person. If you continue to act like a sick person, you cannot help continuing to think of yourself as a sick person. And if you continue to think of yourself as a sick person, you will continue to be a sick person. The first step toward acting externally like a well person is to begin to act internally like a well person. Form your conception of perfect health and get into the way of thinking about perfect health until it begins to have a definite meaning to you. Picture yourself as doing the things a strong and healthy person would do, and have faith that you can and will do those things in that way. Continue this until you have a vivid conception of health and what it means to you. When I speak in this book of a conception of health, I mean a conception that carries with it the idea of the way a healthy person looks and does things. Think of yourself in connection with health until you form a conception of how you would live, appear, act, and do things as a perfectly healthy person, until the thought of health conveys the idea of what health means to you. As I have said in a former chapter, you may not be able to form a clear mental image of yourself in perfect health, but you can form a conception of yourself as acting like a healthy person. Form this conception, and then think only thoughts of perfect health in relation to yourself, and, so far as may be possible, in relation to others. When a thought of sickness or disease is presented to you, reject it. Do not let it get into your mind. Do not entertain or consider it at all. Meet it by thinking health, by thinking that you are well, and by being sincerely grateful for the health you are receiving. Whenever suggestion of disease are coming thick and fast upon you, and you are in a tight place, fall back upon your exercise of gratitude. Connect yourself with the Supreme. Give thanks to God for the perfect health He gives you, and you will soon find yourself able to control your thoughts and to think what you want to think. In times of doubt, trial, and temptation, the exercise of gratitude is always a sheet anchor which will prevent you from being swept away. Remember that the great essential thing is to sever all mental relations with disease and to enter into full mental relationship with health. This is the key to all mental healing. It is the whole thing. Here we see the secret of the great success of Christian Science. More than any other formulated system of practice, it insists that its converts shall sever relations with disease and relate themselves fully with health. The healing power of Christian Science is not in its theological formulae, nor in its denial of matter, but in the fact that it induces the sick to ignore disease as an unreal thing and accept health by faith as a reality. Its failures are made because its practitioners, while thinking in a certain way, do not eat, drink, breathe, and sleep in the same way. While there is no healing power in the repetition of strings of words, yet it is a very convenient thing to have the central thoughts so formulated that you can repeat them readily, so that you can use them as affirmations whenever you are surrounded by an environment which gives you adverse suggestions. When those around you begin to talk of sickness and death, close your ears and mentally assert something like the following. There is one substance, and I am that substance. That substance is eternal, and it is life. I am that substance, and I am eternal life. That substance knows no disease. I am that substance, and I am health. Exercise your willpower in choosing only those thoughts which are thoughts of health, and arrange your environment so that so suggest thoughts of health. Do not have about you books, pictures, or other things which suggest death, disease, deformity, weakness, or age. Have only those which convey the ideas of health, power, joy, vitality, and youth. When you are confronted with a book or anything else which suggests disease, do not give it your attention. Think of your conception of health and your gratitude and affirm as above. Use your willpower to fix your attention upon thoughts of health. In a future chapter I shall touch upon this point again. What I wish to make plain here is that you must think only health, recognize only health, and give your attention only to health, and that you must control thought, recognition, and attention by the use of your will. Do not try to use your will to compel the healthy performance or function within you. The principle of health will attend to that if you give your attention only to thoughts of health. Do not try to exert your will upon the formless to compel it to give you more vitality or power. It is already placing all the power there is at your service. You do not have to use your will to conquer adverse conditions or to subdue unfriendly forces. There are no unfriendly forces. There is only one force, and that force is friendly to you. It is the force which makes for health. Everything in the universe wants you to be well. You have absolutely nothing to overcome but your own habit of thinking in a certain way about disease. Chapter 7. Health from God. I will give a chapter here to explaining how man may receive health from the Supreme. By the Supreme, I mean the thinking substance from which all things are made, and which is in all and through all, seeking more complete expression and fuller life. This intelligent substance, in a perfectly fluid state, permeates and penetrates all things, and is in touch with all minds. It is the source of all energy and power, and constitutes the inflow of life which Swedenborg saw, vitalizing all things. It is working to one definite end, and for the fulfillment of one purpose, and that purpose is the advancement of life towards the complete expression of mind. When man harmonizes himself with this intelligence, it can and will give him health and wisdom. When man holds steadily to the purpose to live more abundantly, he comes into harmony with this supreme intelligence. The purpose of the supreme intelligence is the most abundant life for all. The purpose of this supreme intelligence for you is that you should live more abundantly. If, then, your own purpose is to live more abundantly, you are unified with the Supreme. You are working with it, and it must work with you. But, as the Supreme Intelligence is in all, if you harmonize with it, you must harmonize with all, and you must desire more abundant life for all as well as for yourself. Two great benefits come to you from being in harmony with the Supreme Intelligence. First, you will receive wisdom. By wisdom, I do not mean knowledge of facts, so much as ability to perceive and understand facts, and to judge soundly and act rightly in all matters relating to life. Wisdom is the power to perceive truth, and the ability to make the best use of the knowledge of truth. It is the power to perceive at once the best end to aim at, and the means best adapted to attain that end. With wisdom comes poise, and the power to think rightly, to control and guide your thoughts, and to avoid the difficulties which come from wrong thinking. With wisdom you will be able to select the right courses for your particular needs, and to so govern yourself in all ways as to secure the best results. You will know how to do what you want to do. You can readily see that wisdom must be an essential attribute of the Supreme Intelligence, since that which knows all truth must be wise, and you can also see that just in proportion as you harmonize and unify your mind with that intelligence, you will have wisdom. But I repeat that since this intelligence is all, and in all, you can enter into its wisdom only by harmonizing with it. If there is anything in your desire or your purpose which will bring oppression to any, or work injustice to, or cause lack of life for any, you cannot receive wisdom from the Supreme. Furthermore, your purpose for your own self must be the best. Man can live in three general ways: for the gratification of his body, for that of his intellect, or for that of his soul. The first is accomplished by satisfying the desires for food, drink, and those other things which give enjoyable physical sensations. The second is accomplished by doing those things which cause pleasant mental sensations, such as gratifying the desire for knowledge, or those for fine clothes, fame, power, and so on. The third is accomplished by giving way to the instincts of unselfish love and altruism. Man lives most wisely and completely when he functions most perfectly along all of these lines, without excess in any of them. The man who lives swinishly for the body alone is unwise and out of harmony with God. That man who lives solely for the cold enjoyments of the intellect, though he be absolutely moral, is unwise and out of harmony with God. And the man who lives wholly for the practice of altruism, and who throws himself away for others, is as unwise and as far from harmony with God as those who go to excess in the other ways. To come into full harmony with the Supreme, you must purpose to live to the utmost of your capabilities in body, mind, and soul. This must mean the full exercise of function in all the different ways, but without excess, for excess in one causes deficiency in the others. Behind your desire for health is your own desire for more abundant life, and behind that is the desire of the formless intelligence to live more fully in you. So, as you advance towards perfect health, hold steadily to the purpose to attain complete life, physical, mental, and spiritual, to advance in all ways and in every way to live more. If you hold this purpose, you will be given wisdom. Quote, "He that willeth to do the will of the Father shall know," end quote, said Jesus. Wisdom is the most desirable gift that can come to a man, for it makes him rightly self-governing. But wisdom is not all you may receive from the Supreme Intelligence. You may receive physical energy, vitality, life force. The energy of the formless substance is unlimited and permeates everything. You are already receiving or appropriating to yourself this energy in an automatic and instinctive way. But you can do so to a far greater degree if you set about it intelligently. The measure of a man's strength is not what God is willing to give him, but what he himself has the will and the intelligence to appropriate to himself. God gives you all there is. Your only question is how much to take of the unlimited supply. Professor James has pointed out that there is apparently no limits to the power of men, and this is simply because man's power comes from the inexhaustible reservoir of the Supreme. The runner who has reached the stage of exhaustion, when his physical power seems entirely gone, by running on in a certain way, may receive his second wind. His strength is renewed in a seemingly miraculous fashion, and he can go on indefinitely. And by continuing in a certain way, he may receive a third, fourth, and fifth wind. We do not know where the limit is, or how far it may be possible to extend it. The conditions are that the runner must have absolute faith that the strength will come, and that he must think steadily of strength, and have perfect confidence that he has it, and that he must continue to run on. If he admits a doubt into his mind, he falls exhausted, and if he stops running to wait for the accession of strength, it will never come. His faith in strength, his faith that he can keep on running, and his unwavering purpose to keep on running, and his action in keeping on seem to connect him to the source of energy in such a way as to bring him a new supply. In a very similar manner, the sick person who has unquestioning faith in health, whose purpose brings him into harmony with the source, and who performs the voluntary functions of life in a certain way, will receive. Chapter 8. Summary of the mental actions. Let me now summarize the mental actions and attitudes necessary to the practice of the science of being well. First, you believe that there is a thinking substance from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. This substance is the life of all, and is seeking to express more life in all. It is the principle of life of the universe, and the principle of health in man. Man is a form of the substance, and draws his vitality from it. He is a mind-body of original substance, permeating a physical body, and the thoughts of his mind-body control the functioning of his physical body. If man thinks no thoughts save those of perfect health, the functions of his physical body will be performed in a manner of perfect health. If you would consciously relate yourself to the all-health, your purpose must be to live fully on every plane of your being. You must want all that there is in life for body, mind, and soul, and this will bring you into harmony with all the life there is. The person who is in conscious and intelligent harmony with all will receive a continuous inflow of vital power from the Supreme Life, and this inflow is prevented by angry, selfish, or antagonistic mental attitudes. If you are against any part, you have severed relationship with all. You will receive life, but only instinctively and automatically, not intelligently and purposefully. You can see that if part of you are mentally antagonistic to any part, you cannot be in complete harmony with the whole. Therefore, as Jesus directed, be reconciled to everybody and everything before you offer worship. Want for everybody all that you want for yourself. The reader is recommended to read what we have said in a former work concerning the competitive mind and the creative mind. It is very doubtful whether one who has lost health can completely regain it so long as he remains in the competitive mind. Being on the creative or goodwill plane in mind, the next step is to form a conception of yourself as in perfect health, and to hold no thoughts which are not in full harmony with this conception. Have faith that if you think only thoughts of health, you will establish in your physical body the functioning of health, and use your will to determine that you will think only thoughts of health. Never think of yourself as sick, or as likely to be sick. Never think of sickness in connection with yourself at all. And, as far as may be, shut out of your mind all thoughts of sickness in connection with others. Surround yourself as much as possible with things that suggest the ideas of strength and health. Have faith in health, and accept health as an actual present fact in your life. Claim health as a blessing bestowed upon you by the Supreme Life, and be deeply grateful at all times. Claim the blessing by faith. Know that it is yours, and never admit a contrary thought to your mind. Use your willpower to withhold your attention from every appearance of disease in yourself and others. Do not study disease, think about it, nor speak of it. At all times, when the thought of disease is thrust upon you, move forward into the mental position of prayerful gratitude for your perfect health. The mental actions necessary to being well may now be summed up in a single sentence. Form a conception of yourself in perfect health, and think only those thoughts which are in harmony with that conception. That, with faith and gratitude, and the purpose to really live, covers all the requirements. It is not necessary to take mental exercises of any kind, except as described in Chapter 6, or to do wearying stunts in the way of affirmations and so on. It is not necessary to concentrate the mind on the affected parts. It is far better not to think of any part as affected. It is not necessary to treat yourself by autosuggestion, or to have others treat you in any way whatever. The power that heals is the principle of health within you. And to call this principle into constructive action, it is only necessary, having harmonized yourself with the All-Mind, to claim by faith the All-Health, and to hold that claim until it is physically manifested in all the functions of your body. In order to hold this mental attitude of faith, gratitude, and health, however, your external acts must be only those of health. You cannot long hold the internal attitude of a well person if you continue to perform the external acts of a sick person. It is essential not only that your every thought should be a thought of health, but that your every act should be an act of health, performed in a healthy manner. If you will make every thought a thought of health, and every conscious act an act of health, it must infallibly follow that every internal and unconscious function should come to be healthy, for all the power of life is being. Chapter 9. When to Eat. You cannot build and maintain a perfectly healthy body by mental actions alone, or by the performance of the unconscious or involuntary functions alone. There are certain actions, more or less voluntary, which have a direct and immediate relation with the continuance of life itself. These are eating, drinking, breathing, and sleeping. No matter what a man's thought or mental attitude may be, he cannot live unless he eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps. And moreover, he cannot be well if he eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps in an unnatural or wrong manner. It is therefore vitally important that you should learn the right way to perform these voluntary functions, and I shall proceed to show you this way, beginning with the matter of eating, which is most important. There has been a vast amount of controversy as to when to eat, what to eat, how to eat, and how much to eat, and all this controversy is unnecessary, for the right way is very easy to find. You have only to consider the law which governs all attainment, whether of health, wealth, power, or happiness. And that law is that you must do what you can do now, where you are now, do every separate act in the most perfect manner possible, and put the power of faith into every action. The processes of digestion and assimilation are under the supervision and control of an inner division of man's mentality, which is generally called the subconscious mind. And I shall use that term here in order to be understood. The subconscious mind is in charge of all the functions and processes of life, and when more food is needed by the body, makes the fact known by causing a sensation called hunger. Whenever food is needed and can be used, there is hunger, and whenever there is hunger, it is time to eat. When there is no hunger, it is unnatural and wrong to eat, no matter how great may appear to be the need for food. Even if you are in a condition of apparent starvation, with great emaciation, if there is no hunger, you may know that food cannot be used, and it will be unnatural and wrong for you to eat. Though you have not eaten for days, weeks, or months, if you have no hunger, you may be perfectly sure that food cannot be used, and will probably not be used if taken. Whenever food is needed, if there is power to digest and assimilate it, so that it can be normally used, the subconscious mind will announce the fact by a decided hunger. Food, taken when there is no hunger, will sometimes be digested and assimilated, because nature makes a special effort to perform the task which is thrust upon her against her will. But if food be habitually taken when there is no hunger, the digestive power is at last destroyed, and numberless evils caused. If the foregoing be true, and it is indisputably so, it is a self-evident proposition that the natural time and the healthy time to eat is when one is hungry, and that it is never a natural or healthy action to eat when one is not hungry. You see, then, that it is an easy matter to scientifically settle the question when to eat. Always eat when you are hungry, and never eat when you are not hungry. This is obedience to nature, which is obedience to God. We must not fail, however, to make clear the distinction between hunger and appetite. Hunger is the call of the subconscious mind for more material to be used in repairing and renewing the body, and in keeping up the internal heat, and hunger is never felt unless there is need for more material, and unless there is power to digest it when taken into the stomach. Appetite is a desire for the gratification of sensation. The drunkard has an appetite for liquor, but he cannot have a hunger for it. A normally fed person cannot have a hunger for candy or sweets. The desire for these things is an appetite. You cannot hunger for tea, coffee, spiced foods, or for the various taste-tempting devices of the skilled cook. If you desire these things, it is with appetite, not with hunger. Hunger is nature's call for material to be used in building new cells, and nature never calls for anything which may not be legitimately used for this purpose. Appetite is often largely a matter of habit. If one eats or drinks at a certain hour, and especially if one takes sweetened or spiced or stimulating foods, the desire comes regularly at the same hour. But this habitual desire for food should never be mistaken for hunger. Hunger does not appear at specified times. It only comes when work or exercise has destroyed sufficient tissue to make the taking in of new raw material a necessity. For instance, If a person has been sufficiently fed on the preceding day, it is impossible that he should feel a genuine hunger on arising from refreshing sleep. In sleep, the body is recharged with vital power, and the assimilation of the food which has been taken during the day is completed. The system has no need for food immediately after sleep, unless the person went to his rest in a state of starvation. With a system of feeding, which is even a reasonable approach to a natural one, no one can have a real hunger for an early morning breakfast. There is no such thing possible as a normal or genuine hunger immediately after arising from sound sleep. The early morning breakfast is always taken to gratify appetite, never to satisfy hunger. No matter who you are or what your condition is, no matter how hard you work or how much you are exposed, unless you go to your bed starved, you cannot arise from your bed hungry. Hunger is not caused by sleep, but by work, and it does not matter who you are, or what your condition, or how hard or easy your work. The so-called no breakfast plan is the right plan for you. It is the right plan for everybody, because it is based on the universal law that hunger never comes until it is earned. I am aware that a protest against this will come from the large number of people who enjoy their breakfasts, whose breakfast is their best meal, who believe that their work is so hard that they cannot get through the forenoon on an empty stomach, and so on. But all their arguments fall down before the facts. They enjoy their breakfast as the toper enjoys his morning dram, because it gratifies a habitual appetite, and not because it supplies a natural want. It is their best meal for the same reason as his morning dram is the toper's best drink, and they can get along without it because millions of people of every trade and profession do get along without it, and are vastly better for doing so. If you are to live according to the science of being well, you must never eat until you have an earned hunger. But if I do not eat on arising in the morning, when shall I take my first meal? In 99 cases out of 100, 12 o'clock noon is early enough, and it is generally the most convenient time. If you are doing heavy work, you will get by noon a hunger sufficient to justify a good-sized meal. And if your work is light, you will probably still have hunger enough for a moderate meal. The best general rule or law that can be laid down is that you should eat your first meal of the day at noon, if you are hungry. And if you are not hungry, wait until you become so. And when shall I eat my second meal? Not at all, unless you are hungry for it. And that with a genuine earned hunger. If you do get hungry for a second meal, eat at the most convenient time, but do not eat until you have a really earned hunger. The reader who wishes to fully inform himself as to the reasons for this way of arranging the meal. Chapter 10. What to eat. The current sciences of medicine and hygiene have made no progress toward answering the question, what shall I eat? The contest between the vegetarians and the meat eaters, the cooked food advocates, raw food advocates, and various other schools of theorists seem to be interminable, and from the mountains of evidence and argument piled up for and against each special theory, it is plain that if we depend on these scientists, we shall never know what is the natural food of man. Turning away from the whole controversy, then, we will ask the question of nature herself, and we shall find that she has not left us without an answer. Most of the errors of dietary scientists grow out of a false premise as to the natural state of man. It is assumed that civilization and mental development are unnatural things, that the man who lives in a modern house, in city or country, and who works in modern trade or industry for his living, is leading an unnatural life and is an unnatural environment, that the only natural man is a naked savage, that the farther we get from the savage, the farther we are from nature. This is wrong. The man who has all that art and science can give him is leading the most natural life, because he is living most completely in all his faculties. The dweller in a well-appointed city flat